Hello, and welcome to another episode of Movies, They're pretty good. I'm your host, Travis Dudding, and today I wanted to cover what is currently the highest rated movie on Letterboxd, and that is 1962 film Harakiri by Masaki Kobayashi. I'm hoping I'm... Now, just a blanket apology at the beginning of this. I'm not super well versed in proper pronunciation of Japanese words and film or names, everything like that. So please accept my apology. I try to pronounce everything as correct as possible, and it's just sometimes a little hard without you constantly hearing certain words and certain names all the time. So like I said, just blanket apology across the board if I'm mispronouncing something. But yes, I wanted to do this one for a while, just because it is it's so highly regarded and well deserving. So, in my opinion, it is an incredible film. It does so much for cinema. It's so ahead of its time. I mean, yes and no in that regard, because I think when I say it's ahead of its time, I'm comparing it to American cinema, and everything was ahead of American cinema's time. If you really think about it, just because of how censored and everything we were because of the Hays Code. But it's just an incredible film. It really is. I know it went to Cannes. It did not win the Palme d'Or, but it did win the Grand Jury Prize, I believe. It won something at Cannes. So yeah, it's an incredible movie. And so if anyone who hasn't seen the film, which, what are you doing listening to this or watching it? Harakiri is the ritual suicide that would be performed by samurai in feudal Japan times, obviously, when samurai were a thing. But basically, it's like taking death into your own hands so you can die honorably rather than be killed. That type of thing. It's also seppuku is another term for it, and I've seen that is the noted as the original title of the film. So I don't know. I couldn't tell you what the difference between the two is. I hear each term kind of used interchangeably. I don't know if that's correct. It might be, there might be some differences that I'm not aware of, but that for the terms of this film, we're going to go with the given title. And right here, I have the Criterion Blu-ray of it. This was a lot of times when I see a movie that is in the Criterion collection that I have not seen, for the most part, I see it, I love it, and as soon as the next flash sale or Barnes & Noble sale comes around, it's going in the cart. And that was the case this last year. I had seen it early last year for the first time. It's one that I just kept missing. I would see that it was on Criterion Channel or something like that, and then I would just get busy and not get to it, and then it would be removed or stuff like that. That it happens all the time. For the most part, I was really only familiar with Akira Kurosawa's samurai films. As I'd seen Rashomon way back, saw Seven Samurai, maybe close to 10 years ago, maybe. So, it's not like I was just completely oblivious to Japanese cinema or specifically samurai films, but those are just the ones that would frequently pop up on major lists and stuff like that. And that's what I love about Letterboxd, is I feel like it highlights some of these ones that aren't on the stereotypical base level lists and stuff like that, the IMDb top 250, which I think this one is on there, just but IMDb is, we all know we all know the deal with IMDb. It's it's a haven for review bombing, whether that's negative or positive. It's insanity over there. Don't even get me started on everything that went on with this last season of Stranger Things. It's a whole mess, and I think what irritates me the most about a lot of this stuff and a lot of this discourse is that a lot of the complaints seem to be mitigated by just paying attention to what you're watching or having media literacy at all. Now, that I'm not saying everyone is like has to love it or anything like that, or like it's the best thing that's ever happened to television or anything like that. I'm not saying that by any means. I'm just saying, like, when I see a lot of the complaints and it's like calling out plot holes that aren't plot holes because you just you have no retention of things that you see, or you were sitting on your phone the whole time. You know what I mean? That's the kind of stuff that irritates me. Like I said, I don't think that everyone has to like all the same things or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. But yeah, it's just crazy. But yeah, that's kind of how IMDb is, A lot of those top 250 movies, yeah, I'm glad that they're there. And there's a lot of overlap too, like Shawshank Redemption isn't the number one on the Letterboxd top 250, but it's in the top 10 still, So it's just different, different audiences, and even Letterboxd can be toxic and weird sometimes too. So, it's, you got to pick your battles, I guess, or not even go into the battle. It's just just can't let it bother you, I guess. But the whole reason I bring any of that up is just to say that it does show up on a lot of these other lists and everything like that. It's just not as high as it is. I mean, obviously on Letterboxd it's number one, but it's just not popping up in like the top 25 even of these other lists and everything. So that's what, like, I just kept missing it, until I got like really big into Letterboxd, and I was like, all right, I think once it dethroned Come and See was when I was like, okay, like let me, and even like Come and See becoming the top one was a big deal at the time when that happened. And I'm trying to remember what was number one before that. Like, was it Godfather Part 2? I don't know. That was a few years ago. And it, what does it even matter? But, this is just the type of shit that I think about all the time and focus on and, obsess over. But, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. Bottom line is it became number one. It kind of gave me the push to like actually sit down and watch it. And I'm fucking glad that I did, because it is such a good movie. And I think this was only the second time that I watched it when for this episode, but I was like, you know what? I want to cover something like top rated, like way up there. I kind of think, I'm going to kind of in the end, I'm going to do what I want to do on this podcast, but just kind of like a rough like guideline for me is to kind of go back and forth between like, what's something that's popular and something that's highly rated, and then just something that's like, kind of just for fun, maybe like kind of bad, like Mac and Me for the last episode, and that it is not lost on me that is an insane back to go from Mac and Me to Harakiri, but here we are. But that's just how I like to do it, and not everyone's going to watch this one, and not everyone was going to watch or listen to Mac and Me, so it's just, I think the more variety I have, the wider audience I can get at some point. So yeah, let me get kind of into the plot and everything. So it takes place in 1630, or the main portion of the story takes place at 1630. And we open on a ronin, which is a masterless samurai, arriving at I don't know if you would, I think I see it referred to as a mansion, not quite a castle, but so he's arriving at this place, goes in and is talking to like whoever greets him. I forget a lot of the titles, but basically is like, hey, my house fell some 11 years ago. I was originally from the Fukushima clan, and I've tried to find work, and it's just not working out for me. And I just given up, and I would like to use your sacred grounds to commit harakiri and die honorably. And as this is being told, it transitions from our main protagonist saying this to the this guy telling the main, like the counselor, whoever's like in charge at the time, because I think the actual like main person is gone, like on a trip, something, he's just not there. So whoever like the lead person is, the counselor, is being told this, and he's just like, not again. So come to find out that this has been like a common occurrence lately, is these ronin coming to other houses down on their luck and saying like, hey, like I want to commit harakiri, and rather than having to deal with that, they just kind of want to make the problem go away and send them on their way. But because why this became a trend and why it is suspicious is that there was like kind of like the first guy to kick off the trend. I know they said the name, but I didn't write it down. But he shows up, is like, hey, like it's not working out for me. I want to die honorably. And they're like so impressed by his character and everything like that they're like, hey, don't do that. Like, we need a guy like you. And then they hire him as a retainer, and everything works out. And because that happened, all these other guys, whether they are like serious or not, they're going to do the same thing, whether it is, and it's kind of got to a point where people are just suspicious of it, and they're just like, you just want, like, you're just trying to get a job like the other guy, and it's not going to work out for you, but we also don't want to deal with you dying or whatever, and like we know that you don't actually want to do that, so here's some food, here's some money, you're not going to do that here. What this house decides, this is I think it's the Iyi clan. It's like IYE. I could be, I think I'm way wrong on that. Yes, so it is, I don't know if this pronunciation is correct, but it is the Iyi. It's IYI, is how it's spelled. But basically, like, these guys are like, well, we're not going to be made fools of like these other houses, so we're going to make this guy go through with it. And so they're telling our main guy, Hanshiro Sugumo, and he's played by he just passed away, Tatsuya Nakadai, and he's also the main actor in Kobayashi's other very highly rated, and now I think this is the second highest rated film, is the third part of the Human Condition trilogy, and that's a 3-movie trilogy where each of those films is 3 hours long. So it's basically like you could watch it as like a singular 9-hour movie. And I think it is kind of presented that way in the criterion of that. And I'll probably do that one here pretty soon too, because that's another one that I saw recently and I was just like really pumped about. But I'm not going to do like all 3 right at the same time. I think I'm going to spread it out over time. But I will go in the like correct order of the story and the release and everything like that. So yeah, now they're telling Sugumo about this guy that had come earlier in the year. So this is in May is when like the main chunk is happening, and we're gonna flash back to January of 1630, where Motome Chijiwa is the guy that came with the same story earlier in the year. So he's like, did you know this guy? Because he also came from the Fukushima clan. And he's like, like there's probably like 1,200 guys at the height, so couldn't have known everybody, but, tell me about this guy. And so he starts to tell him the story, kind of hoping to dissuade him basically. And also just kind of weed him out like, hey, are you serious about this? Or, but so the story goes. This guy shows up and he's, he has the same story. He wants to commit harakiri. He wants to, just do it honorably and everything like that. And they're like, nope, like we see right through this. They like have a meeting about it, and they're like, no, this guy, we're gonna make an example of this guy, and so nobody ever comes here trying to do this shit again. And um, so they convene about that. They go back out and tell him, they're like, hey, great news. We're gonna let you do it. So here's some robes. First, they give him like a nice set of robes to just meet the counselor and and bathe him and everything like that. And so he's got to be thinking like, all right, this is going to work out, because it's not like it's just regular robes. It's not the like ceremonial stuff. Wrong. Because then here comes the guy. And he's like, oh, I know you just changed, but you need to change again, and gives him the white robes. And those are the ceremonial ones that are like custom to do harakiri in, basically. And we can see like that he's kind of freaking out, like shit, like that he didn't like actually intend for this to happen. So he's kind of like sweating it, and like you could visibly see on his face. And and they know that too. So this is the whole thing. This is the whole reason for them, basically. So it cuts back to Sugumo while they're telling the story, and the guy telling him was like, so what do you think about this? And he's like, huh? Oh, like this, and he like mimes doing the harakiri. He's like, yeah, no, I'm still planning on doing that. And so then they continue with the story, and that he does that a couple times, and I think it's funny. It's like it's pretty good comedic timing on it and everything, because he's just like, huh? Oh, yeah, no, yeah, I'm gonna do that. So they get back to the story, and Chijiwa's like, hey, like, I'm so glad you guys are gonna let me do this. Would it be okay if I take 2 days off, and I'll come right back? I'm not gonna run away or anything, but I just there's just some things I need to take care of before I do this, and I swear I'm gonna do it. I just need like 2 days, like respite. And they're like, no, dude, like, no, we're not we're not gonna do that. And they take him out there. They get him on the like pad and everything, and they got like all the guys, like everyone is there to like watch this. Like he's got to do this in front of everybody, like every retainer samurai that they have, all of them. So then they got a guy behind him, and he's like, hey, like, that in tradition, every samurai is given a second, and the job of the second is to basically finish the job. They're there to like after. So the traditional way would be for you to disembowel yourself, like you stab in, cut across, and once you've done that, to like once you've done the hard part, the second is there to basically cut your head off so you don't suffer, basically. And it's like, hey, you've already done the hard part, and now we're going to end your suffering, and now you've died honorably. And so he's like, hey, I'm going to be your second. Now, I know like lately they've kind of modernized, he doesn't like word it exactly like this, but basically what he says is like, they've kind of modernized it to where it's more like a, symbolic thing, and the samurai doesn't actually disembowel themselves. And like as soon as they get ready to do it, we cut their head off so they don't have to go through all that. But we here at the E clan want to do it traditionally. We think it's more honorable that way. So they're basically telling them, it's like, no, we're not letting you do this the easy way. You got to actually disembowel yourself. Now, what they've discovered when they were examining his stuff is that his sword is not an actual sword. It is made of bamboo. So he doesn't even have like a real sword. And as he's telling them this, and he's like, oh, and so we also, think you should do it with your sword. That's the honorable thing to do. And so they're expecting him to kill himself with a bamboo sword. And so he tells him that he's got to use his own sword and that he's not going to do the second won't do his part until he's completely satisfied with him disemboweling himself, basically. Like, I want to make sure he did it all the way, you know. So he realizes that he's not getting out of this. And so he grabs the sword that is not an actual sword and like jabs it into his stomach like as hard as he can. And it doesn't do anything cuz it's not sharp. It's just bamboo, it kind of pokes, probably like the extent of a semi maybe like a stick, say you're like out hiking and you pick up a stick and you're kind of walking with it and it catches on a rock and it jabs into your stomach and you're like, ugh, and it might draw a little bit of blood and you might get a scab or something like that, but it's not like you didn't impale yourself and you're gonna bleed out on the trail. It's just like, oh man, that hurt, and you put a band-aid on it, wash it, and you get better. That's basically what he's got going on. And he's trying to like cut into himself, and he's just got to keep jabbing it and jabbing it and jabbing it, and he realizes it's not going to work, and so he full on like puts like the handle of the sword on the ground, and he leans his full body weight into it and just like gets that fucking thing in there, and it is like bloody. It's like gruesome as hell, especially like given like what's like actually going on. Like we have like the full context of everything, and it's like, holy shit, like not only are they like making this guy do it, we're seeing it in a black and white film, which is crazy, for an American, knowing what we know about 60s cinema. It's so like insanely graphic and like hard to watch and just like incredible. And it's like, it's not like it's quick cuts or anything like that. You're living in that moment. Like you're seeing everything. You are it on purpose. They're making you uncomfortable because it should be uncomfortable to watch this guy attempt to disembowel himself with a stick, basically, not a sword, just a stick. And so yeah, you're not getting out of this as the viewer. You're not getting out of this easy, much like he's not getting out of it easy. And so yeah, he gets it in there. He finally gets it to where he's like impaled himself, and it was a lot of work, and he is just trying to cut across, and even the second is telling him it's like you gotta cut across, and he is trying and trying and trying, and basically what he does is like ends up biting his own tongue off and bleeding out that way. Basically it's like he had to find a way to kill himself, and it wasn't going to be moving that sword across because that wasn't going to happen. So yeah, he just like, you just see the blood coming out of his mouth, and he goes to like start to fall over, and then the second does like cut his head off. So now the story's concluded. So he asks him like one more time. He's like, so, what do you think? You still want to do this? And he's like, oh, about the like, yeah, no, I still want to do it. That's what I came here to do. I'm going to do it. And he's like, you're not at all concerned. He's like, my sword's not bamboo. Like, so that ain't going to happen to me. And he's like, all right, well, let me get you the robes. And he's like, no, I don't need that. Just let me die in the robes that I came in. That's what's befitting of me. So they get out there. They have the same setup for him with like in the same like courtyard with the pad and everything, and they got all the retainers out there to watch and everything like that. And so he's like, oh, well, who's going to be my second? Because I get a second, right? And they're like, oh, well, it's going to be, and I forget the name, but they're like, oh, it's going to be that guy. He's like, oh, man, because I've heard so many tales about Hikokuro Omodaka. It's like I've heard so many tales about him, and like I know he's like, if I'm gonna like be moving on to the next life, like I want a skilled swordsman to do it, and I hear he's the best, so like it would just be such an honor for him to do it, and it's customary to be able to request your own second and everything like that, and so they're like, oh, like then he kind of is looking around, he's like, oh, you know what, he's out sick. But it's kind of, then he's like, he kind of thinks to himself and says out loud, he's like, but he seemed fine the other day. So then he ends up sending a messenger. It's like, hey, can you go like check him out? Because maybe it was just like a quick thing, or whatever. Like go see that he's actually sick, or, and we'll figure something out. And I think it is like requested from Sugumo is like, hey, like just like please go check. Because if he's like well enough to cut my head off, then that'd be pretty great. Like that's all I need him to do. He doesn't have to fight me. Just, I just need him to swing a sword and cut my head off. Is that so much to ask for? So yeah, he ends up, the counselor ends up sending a messenger to go like check on him. So then he's like, well, I think it'd be, since we're here and killing time, waiting to see if he's going to come. Maybe I'll tell you a little bit about myself. And then before he starts the story, he's like, can I be assured that every detail you told me about this Chijiwa guy is true? And they're like, yeah, no, everything we told you is 100% true. And he's like, well, that's interesting because this guy was of some acquaintance to me. And so now he starts telling a story of how he knows this guy. And he's going back 11 years ago to when Chijiwa was 15 and his own daughter, Sugumo's daughter, was 11. And like it shows them like with each other, not like, together, but I think because he's Chijiwa, we'll find out, is like kind of a teacher basically. And so it's obvious that they know each other and that their like families were friends with each other. And prior to this, his wife had died. Sugumo's wife had died. So he's been a single dad for 7 years. And it's just been like, a pretty tough life, but he's been managing and everything like that. And he even says like our lives are like houses built on foundations of sand, and like the smallest wind can send everything tumbling down basically. So like they have like a somewhat okay life. This is when he still has this is before his house fell or his master fell and everything like that. So the master ends up getting exiled. I forget what the details of that are, and because of like I forget, I'm pretty sure they said the reason, but I just forget what it was. But whatever reason this guy was getting exiled, it was probably going to lead to Sugumo's friend, Chijiwa's dad, or Motome's dad, because I think Chijiwa's the surname. So Motome's dad was, I guess he was going to go down too with whatever was going on. So he commits Harakiri. And he's there dying, like bleeding out. And, Sugumo like rushes to him and is just like kind of talking with them. And he's just like, promise me you're not going to follow me. And I need you to take care of Motome and like he's your own, and just make sure he's okay, and you better not like be coming with me, that type of thing. So then we cut back to like the main story, and the messenger has returned saying that like, Omodaka's got a fever, and he's just like, he's too sick, he's in too much pain, and he just like can't come. And then so Sugumo's like, oh man, that's too bad. Like, all right, but if he's too sick, I get it. I got another selection. Like, how about Hayato Yazaki? And then the counselor's like, he's out sick too. He's been out for like 5 days. And he's like, yeah, man, that sucks. Like, okay, how about Umenosake Kawabe? There's no way that last name was pronounced right. But that is like, you know what? He's sick too. And at this point, you can see on the counselor's face that he's suspicious. He knows something is going on. He's like, why did he pick these three specific names and all of them happen to be out sick? And Sugumo knows that he is now like putting the pieces together, and he just starts laughing like this, like ha 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 ha, like this like deep, like sinister laugh and everything like that. And he also says like that, hey, like all three of those guys were involved in Matome's death. Like one was I forget the like exact breakdown, but like one was the guy that like figured out that the sword was bamboo and still went along with it. And one was the guy that like said like no, he has to go through with this. Uh and one was the second, and also like making sure that he went through with everything. So all three of these guys were instrumental and had a chance to be like, you know what, maybe we shouldn't do this, and didn't, obviously. Actually, I think it's not Sugumo that says this, that they're all like instrumental. It's when the counselor like freaks out and knows something's up and like gets up and leaves, like while Sugumo's laughing, and then it's him having a conversation with some of the other guys. It's like something's fishy. He knows too much. All three of those guys that he requested were like instrumental in so it's that's how that is found out. I'm remembering now. So yeah, then he sends the messenger out again. He's like, all right, go back to all three of them and like find out the real story. Get as much like actual information as you can. Like, don't let them lie to you, like that type of thing. So he gets back out there and he's like, all right, well, none of these guys are available, so you need to go through with it. That's what you came here to do. So like, you got to do it. And he's like, well, like I refuse to do it without one of these three. Like, I demand to have one of these three. Like, it's my death. Like, I should get to pick who sends me to the next life. And he's like, well, too bad, it's not going to happen, so you just need to do it. And basically, like, it's like you either do it yourself or we're all going to kill you. And basically, like, all the guys like kind of grab their swords and they're like ready to like show basically that's like, hey, as soon as we get the word, you're dead. So it's either you do it or we do it. And he's like, all right, I get that, but hey, like, I haven't finished my story yet, so can I at least do that? Grant me that at least. Obviously I'm gonna die. Can I just finish my story, man? So he cuts to a little bit later when his daughter Miho is now 18, and he like him and her are kind of like making umbrellas. I guess that's their business, and there's someone that's trying to like marry her off to like this one clan, but he refuses. He's like, no, I don't want my daughter to just become a concubine, just so I can get some money and live better. I'd rather like her have like honor and, and us be poor than have that happen, so he refuses that. And then kind of, I think this was like kind of the plan from like a younger age and everything before like things started really falling apart. He goes to see Matome, he is a teacher. He's teaching some kids, and then after the class is over, he talks to him and he's like, hey, like, my daughter's 18 now, and like, I know you guys care about each other. This isn't just some like promise that like me and your dad made a long time ago. It's nothing like that. Like, I know that there is actual love between you guys, and I think like it would be great. It doesn't matter that you don't make a lot of money. Like, that doesn't matter. Like, you guys love each other, so I think you guys should get married, that type of thing. Basically giving him his blessing and basically telling him it's like, don't worry about like all these other things, like getting the right amount of money. No, nothing like that. It's like, love is love. Just, and I'm okay with it. Like, don't let me be the reason this isn't happening, that type of thing. So we see them have the wedding, and then he says, and 2 years later they had a baby, and it was a son, and his name was Kingo, and everything was great for a while. And then we even see in this flashback Sugumo and Matome having a conversation about the scam where these ronin show up to the house and it's they get paid off and then they get to go on their way, and they like both like are talking about it and just like, man, that that's no way to go around doing that, like it's there's no honor in lying or anything like that. They're basically like talking down on this, and it's like that's no matter how bad things get, that's not an option for any of us, that type of thing. Um, but then we see Miho start coughing up blood, and so she gets like super sick, and then they start to get desperate when Kingo also gets sick. And then it's like, all right, they're both like super ill. No one has any money. They have sold off everything pretty much. You won't find out till, well, we know because of what happened, but basically, Motome has pawned off his swords, which is why he had the bamboo ones. But nobody knew that, and then he's like, hey, you know what? Like, it's not the ideal situation, but I know of this money lender, and yeah, he charges these really high rates, but we can figure that out later. I'm just gonna go get the money from him, and we'll do what it takes to pay him off. Obviously, it's gonna be hard, but like, what we don't have any other choice. So I'll be back tonight, and everything's gonna be okay. And so he goes away. He doesn't come back because he didn't actually go to the moneylender. He went to the E clan's mansion and tried to pull that scam, and it didn't work. And then that night, at like 9 p.m., the retainers bring his body back and tell him the story of what happened and tell him about the bamboo swords and everything like that. And they're like being like dicks about it too. It's not like they're just like, I don't know. It didn't seem, not that I'm an expert on samurai honor or by any means, it just didn't seem like the honorable way to do that. But I'm like I said, that's not my area of expertise. But yeah, so they just like tell him the whole story. Him and Miho are sitting there just like taking it all in, just staring at his body laying on the floor. And they eventually leave. And then, obviously they just break down crying, like both of them. And Sugumo's like, it's like, I had no idea that he pawned these off, and why didn't I pawn mine off? Like, why couldn't I let go of these? Why didn't I do something about it? And just like, just obviously just blaming himself. And, it's like, I could have done more, that type of thing, like, yeah, like the end of Schindler's List when he's like, I could have saved more, just that, like that type of thing, like woulda, coulda, shoulda. But that's just not how life works. We don't know all of the possibilities, and there's always more we could do. It's sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. Sometimes you've done everything you can, and it's just it's out of your hands. But and then they obviously didn't get any money, so Kingo, his grandson, dies 2 days later, and then 3 days after that, his daughter Mio dies, and now he has nothing. He has lost in a matter of 5 to 6 days his son-in-law, then his grandson, and then his daughter. So it's just he's got nothing at this point. So like, given that, we're like, us as an audience are putting together kind of like what his end game is. He has nothing to lose. So it's either he can enact some level of revenge or die honorably. Either way, it's like it kind of sounds weird to call it a win-win when it's such a bleak, dire situation, obviously, but it is. Given the scenario and given the circumstances, this is as close to a win-win situation as you can get, basically. So, he's concluded his story and everything, and he's just like, like, after everything that's happened, I've come to the conclusion that I'm pretty sure, like, all this, like, samurai honor and everything like that, this code, it is just a facade that we are putting on and you are putting on. And the counselor's like, no, like, yeah, maybe for a loser like you, that type. I forget like what exactly he says, like what specifically he says, but he does basically. It's just like, no, we're here. We're of the highest of honor. It's you that is like fallen. That type of thing. And so then Tsugumo just starts laughing. He's like, yeah, all right. Well, since you say that, I think it might be time for me to return some items to you. And so he pulls it out of his pocket, throws two like bundles of hair on the ground. And so what these are the like little ponytails or the top knots of the samurai. And what we'll learn, if you didn't already learn, know from like other movies or research history, anything like that. Basically, like a samurai losing their top knot might as well be losing their head. That's like, in terms of honor, that's like, it's they're even. It's equal, because it's like if a guy can get close enough to cut that off of you, he could have cut your head off, and he let you live, and what's that just kind of makes you look even weaker, and it's like, you didn't die trying, and this guy was able to embarrass you like that. That's basically, that's what it is. So then he tells the stories of how he got these, because he's only thrown two on the ground, and we know that there's three samurais that are out sick. So he tells the story of like each one. He's like, I got this guy this many days ago, and I got this guy this many days ago, and he's like sneaking around behind them. And these first two guys were pretty simple, where didn't seem all that complicated, and he got them pretty quick. And he's like, now Omadaka, he was a little harder. And so he found him. Omadaka like knew what happened to the other two guys, and he's like, I know I'm next, so I'm gonna go find this guy, and I'm gonna take care of it. And so he shows up at Tsugumo's house, and he's like, all right, I know you're gonna be coming for me, so I figured I'd come here, but your house is so tiny that if I tried to pull my sword this way, then I'd hit this beam, so he's basically just like, it doesn't make sense for us to fight here, so meet me at this cemetery at this time, and we're gonna have an actual duel, in a space where we can do that. And man, this cinematography is off the fucking charts. It's such a cool looking scene. It is like, it's windy, it's foggy, it's like, oh man, the crazy camera angles and everything like that. It is a masterclass in fight choreography and cinematography and everything like that. It's perfect, But that we see most of the fight, and then it just, we get to the end, and it's like, yep, well, I got him too, and then then he pulls his top knot out and shows. And the counselor's like, all right, well, you're still not getting out of here alive. And he's like, oh, I know that. And so basically everyone gets ready to fight, and he's like, I know I'm dying, but it's my job to take as many of you with me as I can, And so it starts, and they start coming after him, and it's 1 on 50, 100. It's crazy. It's, and this has to be, while I don't know exactly, obviously, and it's not going to be hard to find out, because this dude loves talking about himself, but I'm pretty sure Quentin Tarantino probably took some inspiration from this scene specifically for Kill Bill, specifically the scene at the what's the name of the restaurant? But you know what I'm talking about. The one where she gets to Lucy Liu, but she has to fight like 100 guys before she can get to her. But yeah, that scene specifically is what it made me think of. Obviously, Harakiri came first, like many decades before, but it's it's obviously inspiration for that. But yeah, so it fight starts. Counselors instructs his guys to cut him down, and he doesn't stick around. He goes into hiding in the other room, and it's so cool because like you see the fight starting, and then you see the counselor like walk away and go hide in the other room, but you could still hear the fight happening, and you could just see on the counselor's face that he knows that it's not going well for his guys, and it it's I don't know, it's just a really interesting way to do that, and it's not like it's the whole scene is like that, is that you just hear the fight happening and then eventually he shows up and he's already killed everybody. No, that's not how it happens. You still get to see like the actual fight and everything, and you see him use someone as a human shield. He like stabs him from behind and the blade's coming out like that, and he's like holding him as a shield as so he can get like down a hallway and stuff like that. And eventually it gets to a point where he is like taking hits and getting cut and seeing things like that. So he's getting injured, and it's to the point where he's like stumbling through the walls and stuff, because they have those like thin walls that are like sliding and everything like that. I know there's a name for it, I just don't know it. But yeah, he's like stumbling through the halls and like falling through walls and doors and everything like that. He gets to the shrine room with the it's like a samurai suit of armor that is like representative of the clan and their honor and everything like that. And he just starts fucking with this thing, and he is like knocking it down, and he's grabbing it and using that as a shield. And then some guys come in with rifles and point them at him and start shooting at him, and he's like kind of blocking it as much as he can with the suit of armor. But in the end, he's just it's too far gone and everything like that, and he's done as much as he can at this point, and he's hit his max. So he gets up on the platform where the shrine usually is, and that's where he commits harakiri. And he does it. He disembowels himself, everything, and he took out as many guys as he could, and it went out on his own. Yeah, he got hurt, but he was the one that that decided his own fate, basically. It wasn't anyone else that did the final thing. It was him. So that's all he could have asked for. We get the final count. He killed 4, and 8 were like basically in like critical condition. And then so like once the counselor has been given that tally, he's like, well, the official story is that he came here and committed harakiri, and those 4 guys died of sickness. And then they're like, first they're like kind of like, what do you mean? And he's like, no, like that's what happened, kind of like wink wink, and then the messenger comes back and says that Omadake has committed harakiri, and because he just couldn't handle the shame of being beaten by Sugumo. And so then he's like, then how about you go tell the other guys that they should do the same thing because they're just as bad. And so basically commands the other 2 samurai to commit harakiri. But that's not going to be how they went out. The official story will be that the 4 that died plus those 3 samurai died of a sickness. And then if the wounded end up dying, then it was sickness as well. And basically he's just like, what he's doing is proving Sugumo's point that the samurai code or honor is just a facade, because in order to keep it alive, they're going to just lie through their teeth that, you know, that none of this like dishonorable stuff happened, in order to like live with the shame that their samurai got beaten and had their top knots stolen and everything like that. You know, they'd rather just lie and say that they got sick. You know, so yeah, that it's just proven his point. You know, and I know that because then after this, the like ending montage, like into the credits of the end card and everything, is them just cleaning up after this battle like nothing happened, and just like getting rid of the mat with all the blood on it, and picking up the suit of armor and putting it back together where it was like nothing happened. And then, you know, it's pretty, I think it's a pretty good metaphor, and it did like the director did talk about it in one of the interviews that, I don't remember if it was one I read or one that was on the special features on the Blu-ray, but just talking about how the suit of armor is representative of that like facade, because it's this symbol of their power and everything like that, and their history, and it gets destroyed, and all they do is just put it back up, you know? And it's just this empty symbol that it in the end doesn't really mean anything, because it's easily destroyed or disturbed or anything like that, and you just put it back up there, you know? So if that's the case, where it can't be, like, it can't be touched or it can't be destroyed or anything like that, then it, you know, does it still have meaning? Is the big question, you know? And that, you know, that's just the how existential it gets and everything like that. But yeah, it's such a good movie, and I already talked about how I love the cinematography. The set design was amazing. It's just, especially that like that suit of armor is so intimidating. You see it in the opening credits as well. Just kind of like as they're like establishing the setting and everything like that, you do see that suit of armor, and it is very intimidating. It's very like creepy, and you're almost like, is there, the way it's sat, it doesn't, you know, because you see like a you know, a European suit of armor, and for the most part you could tell that it's just loose armor on a stand, you know. Sometimes they look a little like, is there somebody in there? But that's rare, you know. And this one does look like, it's like, is there like a guy sitting there just very still? And you know, and that's like what it is. But you know, it's not. It's just a suit of armor, and there's no one in there, and it's just symbolism. That's it, you know. But yeah, it's so good. I love this movie. Yeah, like I said, it's bloodier than you're expecting for the time period. The acting is phenomenal too, you know, like that especially that scene where they've brought Motome's body back, and after they leave, you know. I mean, the acting's great all the way through, but I think that's the Oscar moment, you know. Like, that's the one that they're gonna play, like, as they're like listing all the actors that are nominated. That's the scene that they play, you know. But yeah, it was so good. But yeah, I don't think there's too much more to say about it, because a lot of the stuff, if I get too much into the director, then I'll start talking about Human Condition, and I kind of want to, and like I said, I want to do episodes for those movies at some point, you know. Maybe soon, maybe not, you know, I don't know. But yeah, it's I mean, you know, it's got to be the best samurai movie. Yeah, I mean, you know, that's how it's rated on Letterboxd. I would put it above Seven Samurai, but Seven Samurai is still super high. Rashomon, it's just been a long time since I've seen that one, so I do need to rewatch it. I think something that, you know, and this sounds weird to say, because Seven Samurai is the originator of this story trope. So it's not fair to say it, I don't like it as much because it's been recycled so many times because it's the one that started it. That's like saying like, oh, I hate Blair Witch Project because of all of the found footage things that it spawned. And I guess there is something a little bit to that, but me personally, I love Blair Witch Project, where there's a lot of found footage stuff I don't like, but I'm also not super harsh on that genre. I did like Cloverfield, maybe just that one, and maybe just Cloverfield and Blair Witch Project. Uh, but Seven Samurai has been recycled so many times. Like it's the Magnificent Seven. Multiple iterations of that. The American Western version. A Bug's Life is Seven Samurai. And I don't need to get into all that because I'll probably do a Seven Samurai episode at some point. But it's I think it is what makes Harakiri so special is that it is a more original samurai story compared to the other ones I've seen. And it's a little more surprising than those other ones. Because the other ones, it is like there's different clans and they're fighting, or so it's that's a little more normal of a story for that genre. Whereas this is like kind of subverts everything, and I think that's what makes it so interesting. And even if it didn't do that, I think no, I'm not going to say that. I think that is what sets it apart. And it's not to say that you have to do that and you can't have a good movie because those Kurosawa ones do the traditional samurai movie, and there's a reason that they're so recognized for that. So I think the one last thing I will say is that that is in regards to the director Kobayashi, is that he did serve in World War II. Uh, Obviously, Japanese Army. He did refuse to rank up to officer. He says that that was like his way of like protesting because he didn't believe in the war. He got drafted in, like he didn't have a choice in that part. You know, I mean, he could have done like the current American president, just got bone spurs. But so he was in there, and he didn't want to deal with being an officer and like having to be in charge of all those like decisions and stuff like that. And he just like he wanted to be like one of the people and everything like that. And he said that both Human Condition and Harakiri are very much about going against authoritarianism. And he believed that what Japan was doing during World War II and probably prior was very much authoritarianism, and like that they should, like he made Human Condition to like point out those atrocities that they did. Obviously it's a little more common knowledge, the atrocities that Nazi Germany was doing during World War II. But like at least in America, we know a little. You just don't hear so much about what Japan was doing. And I'm not here to say compare or anything like that. Because the argument can be made it's apples and oranges, or the argument can be made that it's the same thing. It's that's not for me to say. I wasn't there, and I've only done so much research on it, and it's kind of a newer, like that information is newer to me, because we just didn't learn that about that in high school, at least not when I was going to high school. Maybe they teach about that more now, but they just weren't back then. But I think it's because in an American high school setting, at least in the time that I was in high school, which was the 2000s, it was more focused on America's involvement in World War II. And America, even though we did fight Japan, we weren't involved in what they were doing to China or Korea at the time, and that's where those atrocities come in, is what I'm saying. But once again, that's more of a human condition thing than a Harakiri thing. But Harakiri is very much in line with that anti-authoritarianism, because it is like it's pointing out the facade in the samurai code, and then you could say the same thing about just like blindly following orders and like all that stuff. Like it does translate to modern times, and that's just kind of the point that he was trying to make. But yeah, I think that, yeah, I'm pretty sure that covers it. I don't I you know I It's just such a big movie that I'm afraid of forgetting something major. But I think I did cover everything. Honestly, worst case scenario, I can record another bit and add that in, or do like a little mini bonus episode or something like that. But I think I covered everything. But yeah, that's Harakiri. Amazing movie. Well deserving of the 4.7 out of 5 that it has on Letterboxd. It's just a phenomenal movie. I think everyone that can read should watch it at least once in their life. It's incredible. It's a very important movie, for a lot of reasons. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Hopefully I wasn't too rambly. But that's what is a podcast if not rambly, So, hey, thank you guys for watching or listening, whichever one it is. Please remember to like, subscribe, rate, review, whichever is applicable to the platform you're consuming this on. I personally think that the video is the best way to do it. Not that I'm like super visual, but sometimes I am. But it's to each his own. But thank you guys regardless. I appreciate anyone that reaches out and tells me that they're listening, whether it's someone I know in real life or not. Just thank you guys. Even if this is just me talking to myself, I enjoy it. So thank you guys for supporting and everything. Hopefully you guys stick around. Remember to follow the Instagram at Movies They're Pretty Good. That's where I'll be posting what the following week's episode is going to be, as well as announcements when each episode comes out. And, and also some other movie content every once in a while. Every once in a while, it's just like, if you're looking at the story, it's probably just a repost of like a film meme or something like that I saw. But yeah, thank you guys for consuming this content, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you join us next week. I don't know who us is. I hope you join me next week, because it's just me. Unless I have a guest. I don't know. Trying to work on a few episodes with guests, but I don't think it'll be next week. Let's just say that. All right. Thank you guys, and see you next week. Bye.